This summer, I've been working in Singapore at a medical device company called Zimmer Biomet. In Singapore, I'm staying at the YMCA on Orchard Road, which is one of Singapore's busiest areas. Being in Singapore for 4 weeks now has allowed me to experience many different cultures and customs throughout the whole country. My experience so far, combined with the three people I have interviewed, has allowed me to gain a better understanding of what it means to be from Singapore. For this interview project, I interviewed three different people with very different backgrounds from Singapore. The first person I interviewed was Mark Chia, who is also a student in the Global Academic Ventures program from the University of Minnesota. Mark is 23 and he was born and he grew up in Singapore. Then he came to the University of Minnesota as an international student. Mark also works in the same office building as me, so I've had a lot of time to talk to him on the way to office and on the way back from office. The next person I interviewed was Jacob Ong, a Singapore sales analyst at Zimmer Biomet. The last person I interviewed was Tony Chen, another one of my colleagues at Zimmer Biomet who is on the marketing team. He specializes in all the knee products that Zimmer Biomet manufactures. He grew up in both Singapore and Taiwan, then went to study at Washington University in St. Louis, worked in Rockville, Maryland, and then finally came back to Singapore. I started each interview by asking these people to describe Singapore. They all said that Singapore was a very naturesque and laid back country, but at the same time also modern and technologically advanced. They said Singapore is a garden city with a melting pot of many different cultures. Singapore is mainly filled with people from China, Malaysia, and India, but that doesn't mean there aren't other people from other cultures in Singapore as well. There are so many different ethnic groups in this small island country that there's a huge mix of traditions, holidays, and customs. This large diversity in people is shown through the official languages of Singapore: English, Tamil, Mandarin, and Malay. One thing that Mark said that really stood out to me was that even though there are many different ethnic groups living in Singapore, there are still small parts in the country that are predominantly one group. In these parts, you are able to fully take in one group's certain culture and customs. For example, if you want to experience the Indian culture, one can head to Little India to look at the colorful clothes and eat some tasty South Indian snacks. To experience the Chinese culture, people can head to Chinatown and experience the vibrant food stalls. Additionally, to experience Malaysian culture, people can head to the Jurong part of Singapore, and to experience the Thai culture, people can head to the Golden Mile complex. All my interviewers believe that Singapore's central cultural values are those that represent all the different aspects that tie into their country. This could be celebrating Eid with those who follow Islam, Diwali with those from India, and Chinese New Year with those originally from China. They said that Singapore is a country that recognizes all the various cultures inside of it. Tony was telling me that in Singapore, the customs and rituals are the most important values when it comes to expressing culture. This is done through many street shows and roadside performances during a huge cultural event. Everyone I interviewed felt that the rules in Singapore are very strict, yet there is still a lot of freedom. One example Jacob brought up was the example of education. He said that even if you're born into a lower socioeconomic class, each student still has the same opportunity to move out of that class and into the bigger world. He said this is because school is mandatory up till 12th grade, and if a family is not able to pay for it, the government comes and helps them out. He also told me that family is very close in Singapore. They all try to eat meals together at the hawker centers whenever possible. They also like to spend weekends doing different activities. Many Singaporean people value exercise. So a lot of them like to play badminton, football, they like to cycle, and they like to run almost every single night. When talking to Tony about Singapore's specific cultural identity, he told me that they didn't really have one. Instead, their cultural identity was one that mixed all the different cultures of people living in Singapore. This includes Westerners, Australians, New Zealanders, Indians, Chinese, and Malays, to name a few. Additionally, Jacob told me that one event that really shaped the Singapore of today was World War II. During World War II, Singapore was under British control. However, as soon as the war started, Britain left Singapore alone and allowed them to be taken over by the Japanese. This caused a lot of grief and anger towards the British from the people of Singapore, and it also started their independence movement. Mark, who studies in the US, has seen and experienced both US and Singapore culture firsthand. He says that both countries are very similar and that they are a melting pot of many different cultures. He believes that this will continue towards the future. Both Singapore and the United States are global economic hubs in their respective regions. Millions of companies from all over the world have headquarters in these regions, and this also attracts many workers from across the world. He believes that a major reason as to why Singapore's culture is the way it is because of their modern technology. The MRT systems are up to date and very quick, and it is very easy to get across the country in a short amount of time. Mark also continues to go on by saying that education up to the 12th grade is required for children, regardless of their race, religion, or political background. This is another reason as to why he believes Singapore attracts more and more people from all types of backgrounds to come live in the country. All the people I interviewed agreed that Singapore will continue to be a melting pot of different cultures many years into the future. They believe this to be the case because Singapore continues to be the global hub of the Asia Pacific region due to its location, technological advancements, and modernization. I have had a great 4 weeks in Singapore, learning a lot about the Southeast Asian culture, and I cannot wait to see what the next 4 weeks has in store for me.